Oh man, can you believe the chaos that unfolded on what was supposed to be the most pivotal morning of my career? I was already running late for a make-or-break interview, my heart pounding like a drum when I bolted out to my truck, slammed the door, and felt my tie flapping behind me like some wild battle flag. Adrenaline was coursing through my veins, urging me to hurry. But when I threw the truck into reverse and glanced over my shoulder, I nearly choked. Right there, across my driveway, stood a brand new 6-foot wooden fence, solid as a fortress, bolted into the ground, with crossbeams that screamed permanence. This wasn't some flimsy construction barrier or a temporary setup, no. This was a full-on, professionally built wall, stretching from one edge of the sidewalk to the other, like the universe itself was flipping me off with a smug grin. And who was standing next to this monstrosity, arms crossed, sipping iced tea like she was auditioning for the role of a Southern movie villain? None other than Karen, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood and president of the HOA, radiating an aura of ridiculous authority. "You'll need to start parking somewhere else," she declared, her voice as steady as if she were commenting on the weather. "This driveway? It violates our community's symmetry. Can you imagine?" I sat there, frozen in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought it might snap, my jaw practically on the floor. Symmetry? Symmetry? That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about a fence. This was war, and Karen had just fired the first shot. I didn't budge, didn't even blink. My temper was rising like a summer storm as I stepped out of the truck, my shoes crunching on the gravel, each step echoing the fury building inside me. This wasn't some innocent mix-up or an overzealous HOA landscaping project gone wrong. This was a deliberate, calculated blockade, drilled into the concrete overnight while I slept. The fence was so new I could smell the fresh wood stain wafting through the air. And it was clear this wasn't a cheap DIY job. Someone had spent serious money on this, which meant Karen wasn't messing around. She meant business. And I was her target. There she stood, in her perfectly pressed tan slacks, a floral blouse that screamed, "I'm in charge," and those oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like she was hosting a garden party instead of holding my driveway hostage. "You're welcome, by the way," she said, waving her hand toward the fence like she was unveiling a masterpiece at an art gallery. "This is the kind of order we need around here." The board voted unanimously. "Your driveway encroaches on HOA maintained space. This fence? It's just correction." "Correction?" I stared at her, my brain struggling to process the audacity. For a split second, I almost burst out laughing at the sheer absurdity, but then reality crashed back in. I'd already rescheduled this interview twice, and if I didn't make it today, I could kiss my dream job goodbye. Time was ticking. And Karen was standing there, like she held all the cards. I spun back toward my truck, my mind racing, as I realized I was literally trapped in my own home. Karen just watched, calm as a cucumber, clearly relishing her little power trip. Here's the kicker. I wasn't even officially part of her precious HOA. My property sat just outside the subdivision's boundaries, a private parcel I'd carved out years ago. My driveway, while it ran alongside the shared road, was entirely on my land. As a civil engineer, I knew this for a fact. I had the original plat, the topographical overlays, the aerial maps. Heck, I could probably 3D model the entire neighborhood with the software on my laptop if I wanted to. But none of that mattered in the heat of the moment, because Karen had decided she was the law, and her word was final. I whipped out my phone and called the city zoning office, my voice tight with frustration. The person on the other end was polite but maddeningly slow, promising someone would look into it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Are you kidding me? I could lose the job of a lifetime in 2 days, let alone 14. So I shifted gears, parked my truck on the street, and hauled it to the interview, arriving with a wrinkled tie, sweat dripping down my back, and my composure hanging by a thread. Somehow, I pulled it together enough to impress the panel and score a callback. But even as I shook hands and flashed a smile, Karen's smug face was burned into my brain, taunting me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I grabbed a flashlight and paced my property, tracing every corner, every stone marker I'd set when I bought the land years ago. Long before the HOA even existed, my house sat on a unique plot, stitched together from 3 separate deeds, one for the home itself, one for a long rectangular patch to the east, and another for what used to be untouched farmland before suburban sprawl took over. Most folks didn't know this, but the HOA was built on shaky ground, literally. A developer had swooped in, snapped up surrounding parcels, and sold homes fast, promising a polished community lifestyle complete with newsletters, landscaping rules, and Karen's iron-fisted leadership. As the cherry on top, I'd always kept to myself, flying under the radar. Until now, the more I paced, the more a single, glorious, downright delicious truth sparked in my mind, like a firework exploding on the 4th of July. Karen was convinced her HOA owned the space next to my driveway. But I remembered something something no one else in the neighborhood knew. When I bought my land, the county assessor's office had confirmed a quirky detail. Karen's house sat on a slice of land leased from a temporary holding company. That company tanked during a market crash, and its assets were sold off. Guess who scooped up a bunch of those parcels at auction, dirt cheap, for future development or resale? That's right, me. I raced inside, heart pounding with excitement, and started digging through old files, flipping through digital storage, until I found it. The archived map, clear as day, parcel 117B. A long, oddly shaped stretch of land slicing diagonally across the neighborhood like a jagged scar. One end wrapped around Karen's living room. The other brushed the edge of my backyard. It was too perfect, too poetic. She hadn't just messed with my driveway. She'd planted her flag on a battlefield she didn't even know I owned. The next day, I played it cool. Karen waved mockingly from behind her precious fence, tossing another HOA notice onto my lawn about unauthorized gravel coloration and misaligned bird baths. Can you believe the nerve? I just nodded, picked up my trash can, and flashed a polite smile, all while hiding the nuclear button I was itching to press. Behind that smile, though, the fuse was lit, and I was ready to blow this thing wide open. Karen wanted to play games with fences. I was about to play Monopoly with her house as the grand prize. The next morning, I woke up at dawn, grabbed my laptop with the kind of energy you reserve for revenge and spreadsheets, and poured myself a steaming cup of coffee. I dove into every document I had on the property, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Years ago, I'd bought up land parcels from a failed development firm that went belly up during the housing bubble. They were practically free, and as a civil engineer, I knew land rights could be gold if you played your cards right. At the time, I wasn't sure what I'd do with them, just a long-term investment, a hedge against the future. But one parcel? Oh, it was my secret weapon. A weird, overlooked triangle of land with no proper access road, stretching just far enough to encompass the foundation of Karen's house. I called my lawyer, a sharp guy who'd helped me with development permits and city bids in the past. When I laid it all out, he went dead silent, then said, "Wait a second, you're telling me she built her house on land you own?" I explained how the original developer probably assumed the HOA would buy up the adjacent parcels, but that never happened. The lease on Karen's land expired last year, and no renewal was ever filed. The title, the zoning rights, The ownership, it was all still in my name, locked and loaded. And there was more. That fence she'd slapped across my driveway, it was sitting on a legal easement I'd filed years ago to ensure access to my property. She was in violation not once, but twice, blocking my easement and squatting on land she didn't own. My lawyer was practically giddy, his voice crackling with excitement through the phone. "Document everything," he said. "Photos, videos, timestamps, everything." So I grabbed my measuring wheel, my drone, and every city-issued plat I could find. I spent the afternoon measuring corners, double-checking landmarks I'd memorized years ago. With my drone buzzing overhead, I mapped the lines visually, and when I overlaid the zoning map on the footage, it was undeniable. Karen's house, her pristine patio, her bragged-about koi pond, all of it sat on my land. Mine. I filed a report with the county records office to confirm the boundaries and get an updated ownership letter, just to dot every I and cross every T. Then I strolled into City Hall, dressed in flannel and jeans, looking like I was there to check a landscaping permit, not drop a real estate bombshell. The clerk pulled my documents, saw the parcel coordinates, and raised her eyebrows. "Oh, this is gonna be messy," she muttered under her breath. I just smiled, handed over my paperwork for stamping, and called the zoning enforcement office to request an inspection not of my property, but Karen's. I asked if they could verify her structure placement and foundation permits based on the current property lines. It was standard procedure, totally within my rights. The clerk said, "Sure, we'll have someone out next week." I thanked her, hung up, and leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the moment. The ball was rolling now, slow and steady, like a wrecking ball, with a polite little bow on top. Karen, of course, had no idea. That evening, she taped another passive-aggressive letter to my mailbox, whining about how my grass was growing in uneven tufts and giving me 72 hours to comply with her landscaping standards. Uneven tufts? I didn't rip it down. I snapped a photo of her taping it up, printed it out, and added it to my growing stack of legal ammo. A few days later, the zoning inspector called, asking to meet in person. When I showed up, he looked equal parts amused and exasperated. "This Karen lady," he said, chuckling. "She told me I wasn't allowed to step on her private land. Said she'd call the sheriff if I took one more picture of her koi pond." I handed him the certified document, my ace in the hole. His eyes widened as he skimmed it, his jaw dropping slightly. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, shaking his head. "This whole corner of her house, it's off the legal boundary. She's got no claim to it." I stood there, my heart racing with a mix of vindication and anticipation. The game was on, and Karen had no idea what was coming. Could this get any crazier? I was about to find out. Can you even imagine the thrill pulsing through me as I stood there, watching the zoning inspector hammer bright orange stakes into the ground, marking the true edges of my property? With his nod of approval, I snapped photos like a detective on a hot case, capturing every angle, drone shots buzzing overhead, ground-level views, and even a few with Karen's panicked garden gnomes staring wide-eyed from her lawn. By the end of the week, my file was airtight, a fortress of evidence that screamed one undeniable truth. Karen's house was squatting on my land like an uninvited guest who'd overstayed their welcome. My lawyer, eyes gleaming as he reviewed the stack, leaned back and asked, "So, what's the plan? File for eviction? Drag her into litigation?" I just grinned, a spark of mischief igniting in my chest. "Neither," I said. "Not yet." Oh, I had something far better in mind. If Karen wanted to play neighborhood royalty, strutting around like she owned the place, I'd treat her like a medieval queen. I wouldn't challenge her crown. I'd sell the land beneath her precious castle to the highest bidder and let the new owner deliver the eviction notice. How's that for a plot twist? I didn't slink into the shadows or list the land quietly. No way. I went bold, plastering the listing across real estate platforms with crystal clear zoning descriptions, dazzling development possibilities, and aerial views that framed Karen's house smack in the center like a bullseye. Within 24 hours, can you believe it? 2 buyers were knocking. One was a contractor itching to build a housing project. The other, a startup dreaming of a renewable energy pilot. Both had deep pockets and zero interest in preserving Karen's suburban palace. I let the offers pile up, savoring the moment, while Karen pranced around, oblivious to the time bomb ticking beneath her throne. I held the detonator, and oh, it felt good. But Karen? She didn't just sit still. She escalated her reign, like a dictator doubling down in a losing war. The day after my listing hit the internet, here she came, storming down the sidewalk in her floppy sun hat, clipboard clutched like a scepter, waving a printed HOA violation report about get this my mailbox font. My mailbox font? I'm not even under her HOA's jurisdiction, but in her mind, she ruled a 3-block empire, and no one was safe from her wrath. She wasn't just tossing out notices. She was stirring the neighborhood into a frothy, angry soup, whipping up drama like a chef gone rogue. She called a mandatory HOA emergency meeting, handing out flyers door to door like some political candidate with a vendetta. I watched from my window, coffee in hand, as she huffed up and down the street, her face a mix of fury and self-righteous glee. Can you imagine the audacity? Her flyer? Oh, it was a masterpiece of paranoia, claiming I was annexing community property and painting me as a dangerous mastermind with aggressive development plans. She even urged residents to report suspicious activity like surveying or drilling. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee all over the floor. Some neighbors bought into her drama, whispering nervously. One guy, catching me while I trimmed my hedges, asked with a sheepish look, "You're not gonna bulldoze the whole neighborhood, right?" I reassured him. I wasn't planning a wrecking ball party yet, but Karen's fear-mongering had worked its magic on a few. She'd stirred up just enough tension to make things spicy, but I knew better than to take the bait. Let her panic. Let her think she was winning. I stayed quiet, biding my time like a chess grandmaster, waiting for the perfect move. Then, out of nowhere, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. And let me tell you, it was a game changer. Karen never finished her final inspection. It read, her house wasn't cleared for full occupancy. Due to foundation discrepancies, records were fudged. Find the missing inspection in city archives under 117B deviation. Check the blueprint discrepancy. A conspiracy? Maybe. But the tone, the detail, it piqued my curiosity. Like a siren's call, I hightailed it to the municipal records office, heart racing, and requested every structural inspection document tied to Karen's parcel. The clerk, bless her, pulled a stack of folders, one flagged with a red tab, stamped incomplete in bold letters. My jaw dropped. The original blueprint called for a smaller foundation, but the contractor had extended it without filing a variance. Karen's house, sitting pretty on my land, had never passed its final inspection and was clinging to a flimsy temporary occupancy permit. Technically, it was unfit for anyone to live in. Can you even wrap your head around that? I scanned those documents faster than you can say gotcha, emailed them to my lawyer, and let out a grin that could have lit up the room. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore, it was a powder keg, and I was holding the match. My lawyer called within the hour, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. "This changes everything," he said. "You can force her to vacate or file for land reclamation with structural encroachment." I asked, "What happened if we pushed hard?" "She'd lose the house," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, but I wasn't in a rush. Karen had made a fool of herself, acting like a war general in a drama she didn't even understand. So I did something petty, but oh so legal. I had a small for sale, land-only sign printed and planted it right on her lawn, perfectly centered under her HOA-approved tulip bush. "Take that, Karen." She spotted it that afternoon while fussing over her flower bed. And let me tell you, her scream could have woken a coma patient. A neighbor thought someone was being attacked. That's how loud it was. She ripped the sign out of the ground and stormed to my porch, banging on the door like a woman possessed, waving the sign in my face and demanding to know what kind of stunt I was pulling. I opened the door, calm as a summer breeze, and said, "Just advertising what's mine." Her face turned scarlet, veins popping like fireworks. "This is harassment," she shrieked. "You're threatening my property." I shook my head, cool as a cucumber. "No, Karen, I'm advertising my property. Yours just happens to be sitting on it without a permit." Her mouth flapped open, but no words came out. For the first time, she realized I wasn't bluffing, and the look on her face, priceless. At the next HOA meeting, held in the community park, Karen took the stage like a tragic actress, reading a prepared statement, accusing me of land manipulation, intimidation, and illegal practices. Halfway through her tirade, a new resident and attorney, no less, stood up and cut her off. "Karen, do you have documentation proving your house passed its final inspection?" he asked, his voice sharp as a blade. The park went silent. Karen stammered, dodging the question like a politician caught in a scandal. But the damage was done. Doubt had taken root, and rumors spread like wildfire. Neighbors started asking me quietly what I'd do next. I told them the truth. I'd sell the land legally, and the buyer could do whatever they wanted. Some laughed nervously. Others leaned in, intrigued by the drama unfolding. Karen's smug smile vanished. Her home, her monument to suburban supremacy, was now a target. And no amount of HOA flyers could stop the storm coming her way. Then, like something out of a movie, a sleek black SUV rolled up to my house. A man in a sharp blazer, representing a real estate investment group, handed me an offer that blew my expectations out of the water. One of their advisors, a retired zoning official who'd worked with Karen's builder, smirked as he said, "We've been waiting for something like this. You're not the first she's crossed, but you might be the last." Can you feel the chills? The day I accepted that offer, the game changed forever. Karen thought this was a petty suburban slap fight over property lines. But when the land changed hands to a powerful development group, her empire became a sandcastle facing a tsunami. The new owners sent Karen a certified letter requesting a chat about her home's unauthorized presence. She ignored it, because of course she did. A second letter arrived via legal courier, and that's when her panic started showing. She walked the neighborhood with less swagger, clutching her violation slips like a flimsy shield. Her precious koi pond lay hidden under a tarp. Her blinds stayed drawn, and her HOA newsletters, they stopped cold. Then came a letter from her attorney, taped to my door, claiming emotional distress and reputational damage. My lawyer laughed so hard, he nearly choked. "This is desperation," he said. "She's stalling." Meanwhile, the developers were moving full speed ahead, planning a cutting-edge smart infrastructure demo with clean energy and green zoning. Karen's house? It was squarely in the way. They filed a land reclamation suit, demanding either removal of her home or a purchase at the parcel's tripled value. Karen tried to rally her troops with an emergency HOA meeting, but only 10 people showed up, including a clueless guy and the lady who always brought cookies. No one stepped up to defend her. Her reign was crumbling, and she knew it. At a final showdown, the developer's legal counsel arrived, laying out the paper trail like a prosecutor: land transfer, zoning orders, inspection failure. This home was built without clearance on land never legally acquired, he said, his voice steady and final. Karen sat there, frozen, her jaw twitching. With no allies left to prop her up, the developers didn't stop there. They hosted a public open house on the parcel, staging a tech park layout that drew locals, press, and even a drone to capture the spectacle. Karen, true to form, yelled at an organizer for trespassing, but he just handed her the new deed and flashed a smile. Checkmate. Then, in a moment no one saw coming, Karen's husband grabbed the mic during the open house, his voice shaking. "We didn't do the research," he said. "We built our life on land that wasn't ours, and now we're paying the price." He dropped the mic and walked away, leaving Karen stunned, her empire in ruins. Her social media went dark, her lawn grew wild, and the HOA stripped her presidency, posting a notice for new elections. The final ruling gave her 30 days to vacate the encroaching portion of her home, basically the whole structure. With her savings drained, she couldn't afford to buy the land. A moving truck rolled up one gray morning. Workers loaded furniture quietly, the air heavy with defeat. Karen emerged, sunglasses hiding swollen eyes, and drove away without a word, her tail between her legs. That fence, her proud monument, stood as a sad testament to her downfall. A worker at the site, spotting me, grinned and said, "You really pulled this off, huh?" I nodded, a quiet pride swelling in my chest. I hadn't shouted or thrown punches, just played the long game with patience, precision, and a touch of revenge that left room for progress. The neighborhood let out a collective sigh of relief. Conversations grew warmer. People lingered on sidewalks, chuckling about things that had nothing to do with HOA rules. Karen's house was deconstructed carefully, its materials salvaged for something better. That fence? It came down in 20 minutes, tossed into a scrap truck, like yesterday's news. The development project kicked off, a mixed-use hub with renewable energy, a plaza, and a community garden that felt like a gift to the future. They even brought me on as a zoning advisor. How's that for irony? Karen's gatekeeping had handed me a bigger role than I ever could have imagined. Neighbors who'd sided with her came by to apologize, their faces sheepish. I didn't hold grudges. Karen could be convincing, and I knew it. The ordeal had shaken her false order, replacing it with a sense of cooperation that felt like a fresh breeze. A local news station ran a feature on the tech park and the wild saga behind it, and I kept my answers honest. I reclaimed what was mine and let the consequences do the talking. The story went viral, spawning memes and Reddit threads that turned our little drama into internet legend. It didn't erase the stress, but it gave the whole mess a purpose, a lesson wrapped in humor and irony. A month later, a plaque went up at the plaza reading, "From dispute to development, proof that boundaries matter." Where Karen's koi pond once sat, wildflowers bloomed, planted by local students with dirt-smudged smiles. One evening, I caught sight of her in a parked car, staring at the transformed land, her face hollow with regret. She drove off without a word, and that was the last I saw of her. The smart plaza became a community hub, buzzing with life. Karen's house was gone, but her lessons lingered like a cautionary tale. Don't build fences without knowing whose ground you're on. Standing your ground doesn't mean shouting it, means staying quiet, gathering facts, and letting the truth settle the score. In the end, the deed won, and I couldn't have scripted it better if I tried.